My name is Jürgen Bühler. I'm the Executive Director of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. I am the third generation of leaders which are leading the Christian Embassy. What you're about to see is about the very first generation of leaders which came to Jerusalem to establish the Christian Embassy. They were pioneers, people of great courage, and today we owe a lot to those people for their activity and for their courage to establish this great ministry.
When the Jerusalem Law was passed in 1980, declaring Jerusalem the undivided, eternal capital, the world went crazy, and all the embassies that were located in Jerusalem moved to Tel Aviv. There was enormous pressure put on Israel. Public relations around the world were not good.
The Arabs immediately understood, politically minded as they are, now we have to move. So they moved with power on all the nations that still had their embassy. If you have still your embassy in Jerusalem after the Israeli parliament has decided this, we will boycott you. We will not give you oil. And then I felt, Lord, we have to answer this. We have to answer this as Christian. I said, International Christian Embassy. We must say, okay, no embassy, then we will do it.
So in 1980, a group of us guys that were involved here in the city and meeting and so on said what was needed was an organization that would show Israel its support, and it would show it as a Christian organization.
George was part of the Almond Branch Association, started by Jan Willem and Wiedad van der Hoven, which was a non-profit group that was really concerned for Israel and had regular prayer meetings and basically stood in as Christians for the people of Israel. And this little group of people basically were praying up a storm, saying, God, what should we do? And they've sensed that he was speaking to them that if governments and politicians won't stand up for Israel, now's the time for Christians to make a bold move and open an international Christian embassy.
Well, I got involved in the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem quite by accident. I had just arrived in Jerusalem as a student to begin a master's degree in Judeo-Christian Studies. And it just so happened that the director of my school and the mentor of my degree became the chairman of the board of this new organization, and one of the students at the school became the financial director. And so we had just started a prayer group, and our first prayer request was about the birthing of this embassy. And so I was there the day the dedication took place.
The first office actually was secured for that grand opening during the feast, which was this tiny little apartment on Rashba Street. It was a basement apartment. It didn't look like much at all, and we worked like crazy to get it presentable in time for the opening, but it was okay. And that little office then served as our headquarters for a whole year, where Johan and I shared an office. Jan Willem had a place where he could receive people publicly. Mervyn Merle had a little corner.
I remember working late into the night with Jan Willem on the wording of the press release for our press conference the next day. And it was interesting because the next morning when we got there, it was called for 9, and there were many reporters that had shown up. And just then, just before we were about to start, some extremists from an anti-missionary group in town came in shouting out loud and taking over the meeting. These people are missionaries, and what these people are trying to do what Hitler didn't do. They're trying to steal our souls and to capture us, capture our minds. Yes, we did not miss a beat. We immediately stood up to our feet, and Jan Willem said in a loud voice, yes, we are missionaries. We are missionaries on behalf of Israel for her historic and biblical cause, and we're going to tell her story everywhere in the world as strongly and powerfully as we can.
Well, I remember the dedication ceremony of this little apartment in the presence of Teddy Kollek, Mayor of Jerusalem, where the statement was made, even though the other embassies may be leaving Jerusalem, we represent Christians who are going to be praying for Jerusalem, and we want to be at the spearhead of others who are going to be returning to Jerusalem.
So I was in the embassy building in the Rashba Street when they planted the Norwegian flag outside the building. I was part of it together with a Norwegian lady that had a group there.
What was very important for the feast was to have musicians at the feast, because the feast is a time of rejoicing, a time of dancing and singing and playing. And a wonderful gifted couple that came to lead in that way was Merv and Bella Watson from Canada. They were very important in the foundation of the embassy, but they were especially important in the contribution they brought and the gifts they brought in terms of the music and the singing and the dancing.
At that celebration of the Feast of Booths in Jerusalem, sponsored by the brand new International Christian Embassy, the festival was held in the courtyard of the Anglican School in Prophet Street, and I was in the choir, led by Merv and Merla Watson.
The feast was established before the embassy. The very first one was in 1979 in Christchurch, right here in Jerusalem. We had about 400 people there. And we had at that point an organization called the Alma Branch.
I think it's about 11 couples or something like that. We got together, we had the Almond Branch, and we got a little visible little apartment you could reach across to start with. He stood up and prayed for Israel and promised to pray for Israel and Germany and all of these former enemies. And so this coalesced, and the mayor of Jerusalem said, "This is the purest thought I've ever experienced," Mr. Teddy Kollek, the purest thought I've ever experienced in Israel.
And I still remember Teddy Kollek, the mayor, said, "This is one of the most moving ceremonies I've ever watched in my life." And he was 25 years the mayor, so I mean he had had many ceremonies. So it was a big compliment. And then later, the year afterwards, the first year that we were in 1981 in the big Binyan Ha'uma, which became the center point for the Feast of Tabernacles for many years, Menachem Begin came in on the platform and he said, "When all the nations left our capital, you Christians came and opened your International Christian Embassy, and we Jewish people knew Israel is not alone." And the people clapped, and then you saw these Christian buses afterwards with "Israel, you're not alone." It became like a proverbial saying.
In the early feast, we maybe had 1,000 people present when we opened the Christian Embassy during that feast time. But then in '82, there was a Lebanese war on, and we didn't expect anybody to come. In the end, over 5,000 came from all over the world to the 1982 feast. And that's when we realized that we're sitting on the tremendous potential of Christians who could not only love Israel, but also make a pilgrimage here to give practical support. And we were amazed at the response from all over the world to that feast, especially after the difficult times of the Lebanese war.
I express our appreciation to you for coming to Jerusalem, the holy city, our nation's eternal capital, and for the support and encouragement that you have given us. Your very presence at this time is a source of strength to the people of Israel.